We now turn our attention to US President Donald Trump, who's in the news almost every day. Well, what he's now announced is a golden card to get US citizenship. It's meant for the world's uber rich, making it easier for extremely rich people to go ahead and buy American citizenship from his so-called gold card. It will be costing $5 million. Remember, there are already mechanisms by which those who are affluent can go ahead and take citizenship in other parts of the world, something that around the world visa programs run. So US has such a visa program, which is the EB-5, but there the cap was $800,000, and there's a certain cap of the number of people who can be taken in that particular category. Well, President Trump has completely changed that rule. He's turned it upside down. He says it's not going to cost $800,000. It's now going to cost $5 million, which is why they're going to be gold cards, a currency and a color that President Trump really likes. Also, there will be no cap. Unlike the EB-5 visa programs, where there's a certain cap of the number of people who can take this route every year, President Trump says there could be millions of people who could be taking the gold card route, and that he thinks could be his way of ending the deficit of the US. Very bold, strong move and directive as far as which way the immigration policies of America could in fact turn going forward. So we're going to try and dissect what this means for India, what this means for the new set of policies that America may come out with, and is it possible that there could be Russian oligarchs who could be qualifying for this golden card, and some very technically high-skilled people may not be able to make that cut. What's this story all about? My colleague Parmeshwar Bawa breaks that down for you.
Well, US President Donald Trump says he's open to attracting one kind of immigrant: people with money. In a major announcement, Trump and his Commerce Secretary have revealed plans for a brand new immigration program called the Gold Card. And this program would allow foreign nationals to buy legal residency in the United States for a hefty price, about $5 million. And it could replace the controversial EB-5 visa program, which has been criticized for years due to fraud and also lack of oversight. But here's the catch. This is not just about investing in projects, it's about paying directly to the US government. Trump described the Gold Card as not just a route to residency, but as an upgraded green card, offering privileges beyond what the existing system provides. And yes, wealthy people will be at the center of this plan. But that's not all. Trump hinted that corporations could also purchase green cards for their top employees, including those with exceptional skills or educational backgrounds, essentially making this a fast track to citizenship for the best and the brightest, if they can pay up. Trump's Commerce Secretary, who has been vocal about the inefficiency of the current EB-5 program in the US, has called this new plan a much-needed fix, one that would create world-class global citizens, people who can contribute to the US economy and apparently fill its coffers. But what about the risk? Critics say this program could turn the US into a destination only for the rich, potentially sidelining the working-class immigrants who contribute so much to that country. Plus, there's no word yet on whether these gold card holders will be required to create jobs, which is a key component of the EB-5. And in a twist, Trump even floated the idea of selling up to 10 million gold cards as a way to reduce the national deficit, which is a move that could make waves across the globe. And yes, he even suggested Russian oligarchs might be eligible, causing an uproar over potential ties to controversial figures.
So you got to know what the story is all about. I'm now going to pose the big questions that hopefully we'll try and get answers to. First and foremost, will this turn US into a hub for oligarchs? Does it mean Russian oligarchs, Chinese oligarchs are really going to be the ones who would get easy access to American citizenship? Second key question, billionaire Trump is now wooing the world's super rich. What happens to those who actually contribute to the American economy? The ones in technology, the ones in STEM that America has for decades really been trying to get into its system. And thirdly, will this delay the process when it comes to Indians who are seeking green cards? Remember, those Indians who are in the line or in the queue for green cards are predominantly through the H-1B program and several other such highly skilled programs. What happens to those? Millions will enter through the gold card, but will the queue go longer for those waiting through the other routes? That's the question that we're going to put forth. Joining me is Dr. Shreya Upadhyay from the Kalinga Institute of Indo-Pacific Studies. And we also have David K. Johnston joining me live from Washington. He's professor at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Let me start with you, Professor Johnston. How do you read this new day, new policy announcement by President Trump, this time around turning the entire EB-5 program on its head? That's being now changed by, well, a gold card.
Well, this is totally expectable from Donald. Donald likes people who have money, and he doesn't care much about their character. It would also be economically bad for the United States. There's a model at the school he went to, Penn, the university in Philadelphia, that shows that regardless of education, letting more people into the country creates the greatest economic growth, very substantial economic growth. Whereas Donald's proposing only to let in very wealthy people. And his language was very interesting and typical of Donald. He said he would sell these cards.
That indeed is very interesting because, you know, what you are hinting at is not just a flat $5 million fee. What you are hinting is probably that being a reserve price for some sort of an auction. Again, we are just sort of debating here and there is no clarity there. But Dr. Shreya, I want to ask you about the impact this has on India. Of course, you know, whoever is rich enough to buy the ticket price of $5 million will get access to a citizenship. But what about so many of Indians who qualify as being highly skilled, contributing to the American economy, to the growth engine? What happens to all of them?
Thank you, Gaurie. So definitely this does raise concerns for Indians who are awaiting green card. Almost 1 million Indians are currently stuck in very employment-based backlogs. And if we see that Donald Trump is actually shifting from, shifting towards a wealth-based immigration model that favors business professionals over skilled professionals. But there are other alternatives available. EB-5, while it is currently, we don't know what will happen to it, but it still remains. There is also, O1 visa, L1 visa, and H1B visa for Indian tech workers. So there are alternatives, but definitely this can be a setback for a lot of Indian workers who are who have been in fact in line for 50 years.
So here's how I read it. Here's how I read it, Dr. Shreya. Again, I'm reading with a very preliminary information that is available to us right now. But here's my reading. President Trump is very clear that he wants to crack down on immigration. He's very clear that he wants to address his core MAGA constituency. And at the same time, he's quite clear that he wants to get the rich folks in. So what this means is that those in the other categories could either find it tougher because the threshold may increase, or the waiting period could increase because the number of people right now itself 7% may shrink further because he's opened the other window, which is the uber rich window. Is that how you see it, Dr. Shreya?
Definitely, Gaurie, and there is still uncertainty when it comes to how the entire green card will work, how the entire golden card will work. There's still uncertainty. There are details awaited on processing, on vetting, and the entire long-term benefits are also very vague. Besides, there are also legal challenges to it. So we don't know whether the entire program will be, driven by Congress, or does it need congressional approval or not. But most importantly for Indians, it's a matter of affordability. So, a lot of the tech workers and the highly skilled workers may not be able to afford this, while this may actually work very well for the CEOs and the uber rich, even in India.
Absolutely, or anywhere in the world for that matter. There are two questions that I want to in fact get both your thoughts on, starting with you, Professor Johnston, which is first and foremost, are there any legal challenges possible on something like this? Because surely the team Trump would have done some basic vetting of this, right?
Oh, I wouldn't expect they've done any vetting of it. This is a very chaotic White House, and Donald is not a man who reads papers. He reads headlines. He doesn't read memos from the staff. If Congress passes this, then we can have that program. Congress could also block it. But this is part of Donald's movement to ensure that America becomes a country of, by, and for the super rich.
Indeed. Dr. Shreya, you want to comment on that? Do you see any possible legal hurdles to something like that?
There are definitely going to be lawsuits, and the Congress may not be on board with this decision. And so definitely it's a long way to how it will be implemented. Also, we need to understand that political rhetorics are very different from a lot of times what happens on the ground. So as we all know that Trump is trying to create a certain sensation, a news, a very transactional element to his, a transactional narrative to his entire presidency.
Yes.
So a lot of these, whatever is happening is based on that.
Indeed. And, before I ask you about what this means for the economy, because, there's no pressure to actually create jobs in this kind of a program, there's one thing I'm going to say, which is that before his inauguration, President Trump said very important comment, that one line where he said, and his team said, that every one of the nominees will get confirmed, you wait and see. And they did get confirmed, right? I mean, so that really sort of puts the political context in which we are having, this conversation that, legal hurdles, possible blockage. One needs to remember that President Trump is at a very favorable position on all these parameters. But let me then ask you, Professor Johnston, on the fact that what about the downstream impact? There's no requirement to actually create jobs. All you need to do is just pay up front.
The existing EB-5 program required you to create at least 10 jobs. They were supposed to be in either poor or rural areas. There's been a fair amount of fraud in that program, and there's no reason to think there might not be fraud in Donald's new proposal. But if you want economic growth, you want to bring strivers in, people who have really worked to develop themselves, not people who already have a large amount of money and are likely, in a majority of cases, to be what economists call risk averse. They're not going to take risky chances that would create a lot of jobs, develop advances in science. It's strivers who build an economy, and Donald doesn't like strivers.
Okay, yes. Quick closing comments. Dr. Shreya, to you.
Yes. So I also want to point out that there are, these golden visas are common in whether in UK and Spain and Greece.
Indeed.
But all of these
Australia
countries,
as well.
These countries are now realizing the downward trends of something like this, which can be used for fraud, which can be used for money laundering. It can drive up housing costs in cities. So all of these things, I don't think the administration has really given a thought into it, or maybe it does not matter to them. For us, for Indians, it's, our immigration currently, we are in news for our illegal immigration, and more than 350 Indians have undocumented Indians have been deported. And so immigration is a very polarizing factor when it, in the American domestic politics. And so all of these, news items that are there are basically targeting immigration at a certain level.
All right, we leave it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this edition of India Global.